All right, welcome back. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on how those awesome websites you use every single day are actually built. And we're going to be focusing on one of the biggest tools in the game, Angular. So yeah, let's just dive right in.
I mean, have you ever been scrolling through a really slick web app and just stopped and wondered, how in the world does this thing work? You know, how does it feel so snappy and interactive, almost like a program you'd run on your computer, but it's all happening inside your browser? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today.
Okay, so the secret sauce is that it's really two sides of the same coin. There's a client-side front end and a server-side back end. The easiest way to think about it is like a restaurant. The front end, that's the dining room. It's everything you see and touch. The menu, the tables, the decor, it's your whole experience. But the back end, well, that's the kitchen. That's where all the real work happens, right? Where the food, the data is prepped, cooked, and sent out to your table.
So before we really zoom in on Angular, which, by the way, lives in the dining room, we've got to look at the whole blueprint first. It's super important to see how the dining room and the kitchen are actually connected and designed to work together perfectly. And that whole picture, that's what we call the full stack.
So, what is full stack development? It's basically the whole shebang. It means you're building the entire application, from the shiny buttons you click on the screen all the way down to the database that's storing your profile information. A full-stack developer, they're kind of like the master architect who designs both that beautiful, welcoming dining room and the super efficient, high-tech kitchen behind the scenes.
And here's how that conversation between the two sides actually plays out. It's a constant back and forth. So, step 1, your Angular front end sends an order to the kitchen. That's what we call an HTTP request. Step 2, the back end, maybe using something like Express.js, gets that order, heads to the database to grab the ingredients, and cooks up what you asked for. Step 3, the backend sends the finished dish, the response, back out to the dining room. And finally, step 4, Angular takes that data and instantly updates what you see on your screen. This little dance happens thousands of times in any modern app you use.
All right, so now that we've got the 30,000-foot view, let's zoom way in. We're going to focus on the front end, the dining room, and specifically on Angular. This is the piece of the puzzle that makes the user experience feel so slick and, well, modern. So what's the deal with Angular anyway? Well, it's this incredibly powerful open-source framework that was actually developed by Google, and it's designed for building what we call single-page applications, or SPAs for short. Now, you know those apps where the page never seems to fully reload? You click around and new stuff just appears instantly? That's an SPA. They feel so fast because they load just once and then everything else is updated on the fly. And Angular, it gives you literally everything you need to build that experience. Okay, to really get how Angular does its magic, you gotta understand its core building blocks. Seriously, just think of them as the fundamental Lego bricks you use to build any Angular app.
First up, and you could argue these are the most important, are components. So what's a component? It's basically a self-contained, reusable piece of your user interface. That navigation bar at the top of a site, that's a component. A little user profile card with a picture and a name, yep, that's a component too. A search box, you guessed it, a component. Each one is like a mini app that controls its own little patch of the screen, with its own logic, its own HTML, and its own styling.
All right, next up we have services. Now, if components are the things you see, services are the invisible workers doing the heavy lifting in the background. Their whole job is to handle tasks that need to be shared across different components. Things like, I don't know, fetching data from the server or logging what a user is doing. This is so cool because it means you don't have to write the same code over and over again. It keeps everything neat and tidy.
And the last of the big three are directives. Think of these as special instructions or superpowers you can give to your HTML to make it dynamic. The most common ones let you do really powerful things. For example, you can tell an element to only appear if a certain condition is true. That's a directive called ngF. Or you can take a list of items and tell your app to create a new element for each one. That's ng4. They basically bring your static HTML to life with logic.
So let's just recap that real quick, because it's important. Components, they control the UI, what you actually see. Services, they manage all the shared logic and data in the background. And directives, they manipulate what you see based on that logic and data. These three together, that's the heart and soul of pretty much any Angular app.
Okay, so we've got our building blocks. We know about components, services, and directives. But there's still a missing piece, right?
how does our fancy front-end dining room actually talk to the kitchen in the backend? How does it place that order we talked about?
Well, this right here is how it happens. In Angular, you've got this awesome tool called the HTTP client. And that little snippet of code you see, that's it. That's the front end, clear as day, saying, hey, server, can you please get me the data from the /API user's address? It's literally the waiter writing down the order and sending it to the kitchen. And this is the other side of the phone call. The backend server running Express.js is just sitting there, listening. As soon as it hears that request come in for /API/users, it springs into action. It grabs whatever data is needed, packages it up, and sends it right back. So the kitchen got the order, cooked the meal, and now the dish is on its way to the table. Now, that backend kitchen usually has a few key parts. You've got Node.js, which is amazing because it lets you run JavaScript, the language of the web, on the server. Then you have Express.js, which is a framework that just makes it way easier to organize everything. The database, think MongoDB or MySQL, that's your pantry. It's where all the raw ingredients, all your data, are stored. And then you have things like JWTs, which are basically for security. They're like a VIP pass that makes sure only the right people can get in.
This whole connection is especially powerful when you're dealing with user input, like when someone fills out a form. And for forms, which pretty much every app needs, Angular actually gives you two different flavors to choose from. You've got template-driven forms, which are super simple and great for basic stuff like a search bar or a login form. Then you have reactive forms, which are way more powerful and scalable, perfect for those really complex, dynamic forms with lots of custom rules.
Okay, so we've designed our beautiful front end with Angular. We've built our efficient backend with Express. They're talking to each other. What's left? Well, the final step, of course. Getting this thing off of our own computer and out onto the internet for the whole world to see. And this is pretty much the path to get there. First, you run a simple command that takes your whole Angular app and bundles it up into a neat little package of super optimized files. Then you just drop that package of files into your backend server's public folder. After that, you start up your server using a tool that keeps it running reliably, and voila, you push it to a hosting platform like Heroku or Render, and just like that, your app is live for anyone to use. And you know, this really brings it all full circle. Angular isn't just some small library you sprinkle in. It's a complete solution. It's a full-on framework with opinions on how to do things right. It gives you this solid, scalable, high-performance blueprint for building truly modern web applications. So there you have it. We've walked through the entire full-stack blueprint. We started with the Angular components that the user sees, went all the way to the back-end server in the kitchen, and saw how they communicate and eventually get launched into the world. So I guess the only question left for you is, now that you have the blueprint, what are you going to build? Thanks so much for tuning in.